Hey everyone, in this video I am going to be talking about the book Pen Pal by J.T. Geissinger. And this is a book that is in the genre of romance, but also thriller and paranormal kind of vibes. Um, I devoured this book. I just absolutely ran through it in just a few hours. I could not put it down. I was reading it when I woke up, I was reading it when I was making dinner. If I had a few minutes, I was reading this book. My friend loaned me this book along with several other smutty novels. And with the other books, she kind of told me what they were about. But with this one, she left it really vague. She really only told me that I think you'll really enjoy this one. And that intrigued me. But I really kind of appreciate that she didn't give me any hints or spoilers because other than knowing that it was smut and there was going to be like sexy scenes, I could go into this book with zero expectations and zero assumptions, which really allowed me to enjoy the ride that this book takes you on. So, I'm going to start by running you through the plot because it is a little bit complicated. So, if you don't want spoilers for this book, this probably isn't the video for you. So the main character of this book is Kayla, and we start by seeing her at her husband's funeral. He died by drowning while he was out on their boat. And when she returns home from the funeral, she finds a letter in her kitchen that's addressed from this guy named Dante, and it's from the Washington State Penitentiary. She doesn't know who he is. She doesn't know anybody in the penitentiary. She doesn't understand where this letter even came from. It just showed up on her counter. But she thought maybe, the maid brought it in, whatever. All the letter says was, I'll wait forever if I have to. So, part of the plot of the whole book is kind of the back and forth correspondence between her and this guy, Dante, mainly with her trying to figure out who he is and how he knows her and like what these letters are even supposed to be for. Separate from the letters, her house is very old and it needs a lot of work done. She's having electrical issues. She smells a really weird smell when the dryer's going. The doorbell rings and nobody's at the front door. The lights flicker and it just seems like there's like faulty wiring or something. And then she also has a leak in her roof that's pretty bad. The first guy that she has come out to look at her house is this kind of stoner hippie guy that she doesn't really think is a good choice to do the work because he doesn't really seem like he's really all that present. He seems kind of high. He's very whatever dude kind of vibes. And he also tells her that there's nothing wrong with her electrical wiring. He says everything's fine, but it's very obviously not fine. So she just kind of chalks it up to he doesn't really know what he's doing. But he does tell her that the roof leak is a pretty serious job, so she has to have a specialist come out. And that's where Aiden comes into the picture. Aiden is the guy that comes to look at her roof leak, and he seems really standoffish at first, and she doesn't seem to like him. They kind of give sassy attitude back and forth to each other. But then one night they see each other at a bar, and this is where the spicy romance part really takes off and really picks up. Aiden lives above the bar, and he really comes on to her, basically lays out all of his sexual fantasies with her, and um, she's very taken aback by it and doesn't really know if she wants to pursue it, even though she's really attracted to him because her husband just died. So she feels like it's not been enough time for her to move on from that. And she tells Aiden that she's separated from her husband, not that he died. And Aiden's really respectful about that to a point that comes up a little bit later. She later on that night, she thinks that someone broke into her house. And so, remembering that Aiden lives above the bar that they were at, she actually runs to his house in the middle of the night. And this is basically where the sex takes off. It's basically their relationship is very hot and heavy right from the start. Um, Very smutty scenes, a lot of chase scenes, and he calls her Bunny, and there's the whole like role playing kind of dynamic to that. But those scenes are great. They're done very well. In response to thinking someone broke into her house, Aiden has his friend install security cameras in her house so that an alarm goes off if someone opens the door, and there's cameras that are motion detecting. And the cameras don't pick anything up any other time that Kayla hears the floorboards creak, that things are moved into a different spot in her house. And it's just, she's not understanding why the cameras aren't picking things up, but she's hearing these whispers and hearing the floorboards creak like someone walking upstairs, and it's all just really freaking her out. This is kind of the point where I started to get the idea that maybe it is a paranormal kind of vibe, and it's actually her husband that's haunting the house because she's moved on so quickly to Aiden. And that kind of idea feels like it would be supported throughout a good bulk of the book. Um, but there's an older woman named Fiona who comes to clean the house on a regular basis. And Kayla tells her everything that's going on, tells her about the headaches she's having and the weird things she's hearing, and even the visual things she's seeing. And Fiona tells her that the house is haunted. And she's an old Scottish woman, so she's a full believer in ghosts and needing to help some ghosts move on to the afterlife. And her sister is actually medium, and Fiona offers to come over to the house with her sister and do a seance to help the ghost move on to its afterlife. But she does warn Kayla at this point that it is crucial that she doesn't confront the ghost, and she doesn't tell the ghost that it's dead, because that's a surefire way to agitate it. And at this point, Kayla's still wearing her wedding ring, which is starting to wear on Aiden in their relationship. He's really afraid to get his heart broken if she decides to go back to her husband, because remember, she had told him that they're separated, not that he died. So he tells her that he wants no one else but her, but that he also can't move forward in their relationship until she fully moves on from her husband. And so he is kind of giving her like a low key ultimatum, and basically says, I can't see you until you decide to take your ring off, which is totally understandable from his point of view. And so this is kind of the point in the book where the smutty aspect and the sex scenes kind of really take a back seat. And that actually works out really well. Sometimes I don't like when books are really unbalanced like that, where the sex is really heavy in the front of the book, but isn't really there in the second half, and vice versa. But here it's done well, because taking a break from the relationship and the sex gives the space for the paranormal part of the plot to really shine and really let that aspect be done well. So while she's on this break with Aiden, Kayla finally agrees to do the seance with Fiona and her sister. And during that seance is when a bunch of paranormal shit happens. Knocks can be heard when they ask questions. Lights flicker. Kayla feels something touch her shoulder. And then Kayla's wedding ring actually falls through the ceiling, which really freaks her out. And the seance is actually the catalyst for the big reveal of the whole book, that Kayla is actually the ghost that is haunting the house. And you also find out that like the hippie stoner guy that came to look at her house at the beginning was actually also dead. He had died decades ago, and that's kind of why he had that hippie vibe to him. Um, she had seen like a little boy playing in the backyard in previous scenes, and had also seen like an angry guy in their backyard, but she could never get close enough to either of them. And you learn that those characters aren't dead. The little boy that was playing in the backyard is actually the little boy of the couple who currently lives in the house. And that family is actually the one that Fiona and her sister are trying to help cleanse the house for, since Kayla is the one that is needing help moving on to the afterlife. And the angry guy that Kayla keeps seeing is actually her husband, or her ex husband. He's not dead. It wasn't his funeral that Kayla was attending. It was her funeral that she was at in her ghostly form. It turns out that her husband was actually really abusive and really narcissistic. So Kayla left him and divorced him. And then shortly after she left her ex husband is when she met Aiden and they fell in love. They immediately hit it off. And so every scene with Aiden in the first half of the book is real. It did actually happen, but it was just her remembering those things with Aiden from when she was alive. On New Year's Eve, her and Aiden were actually going to go out on her boat, and her ex husband was hiding on the boat waiting for them. He was in a really big jealous rage, screaming the typical, like, if I can't have you, no one can kind of thing. And then he actually shot and killed Aiden and then took Kayla to the edge of the boat and held her underwater until she drowned. So her ex husband actually killed both her and Aiden. So Aiden was also dead this whole time. And once Kayla has the realization that she's actually the one that's dead and that Aiden is dead, the doorbell rings and it's Aiden that's standing there when she opens the door. So he's been the one this whole time that has been ringing the doorbell. He's been trying to uh, get her to realize that she is dead since their death. And he was actually the one that was leaving the letters for Kayla from Dante. Um, Dante Alighieri being the author of The Divine Comedy, which is a book that Aiden was reading at one point. And Dante Alighieri is also an anagram for Aiden's full name, which is Aiden Laywright. He had them labeled as being sent from the state penitentiary to hopefully help Kayla remember that her husband is who killed them, because her husband is now incarcerated and being held at the penitentiary, being charged with their murders. And again, her ex husband is like a classic narcissist, thinking he's the most intelligent man in the world and that he's better than everyone, blah, blah, blah. So the end scene of the book is basically her ex husband is being interviewed by someone in the penitentiary to determine if he's mentally competent to stand trial and if it was like a premeditated kind of deal. And he's insisting the whole time that it was all self defense and that he did nothing wrong, that they were the problem. But then Aiden and Kayla, who are now both together because she's realized that she is dead, they show up in the room that he's being interviewed at in their ghost form, having decided to basically spend the rest of their ghostly eternity haunting her ex-husband as he spirals into insanity because now he's seeing ghosts of the people he killed. So that's basically the plot. As far as how I would rate this book, the spice level, I would probably label it as hot, on a scale from like mild, medium, hot, extra hot, whatever. It's up there. It does have some chase scenes, and like I said, he calls her Bunny, and they have this whole fun dynamic to it. But another level to the spice that I really enjoyed is that with Aiden, she really finds her sexuality again. Like, she has a good time with him. And I really like that she kind of comes out of her shell and, like, fully accepts what she likes, and she's just having a good time. And I think that that's its own separate kind of hot and sexy. So the spice level was pretty good for me in this book. The plot, I would rate a 5 out of 5. It had great twists, great reveals. The paranormal aspect was done well. Sometimes I don't really care for paranormal genres, but this one was done really well. I did figure out fairly early on that she was the one that was going to be revealed as the one that's dead, but that didn't like ruin the experience for me or anything. I still thoroughly enjoyed the plot of this book. The jealous ex-lover aspect can sometimes be really cringy, but it wasn't in this book. It was done really well and it fit really well. As far as the writing, I would probably rate it a 4, just because like it was really good writing, but I was a little bit confused with the letters and how they fit into the plot. But again, I probably would have picked up on the connection of the letters if I thought a little bit harder about it. Just the whole relationship between the names Aiden and Dante, and just what some of the letters said, I probably could have connected that it was Aiden trying to communicate with Kayla, but not knowing that Aiden was also dead might have played a little bit of a part in me struggling with that a little bit. The emotional aspects, I rated a 3, and not because they were bad, just because like they weren't intense necessarily. Um, the emotions in this book made sense. That it just wasn't like a highly like emotion evoking story for me. It was a great story and a good plot, but just the emotions weren't in my face. Overall, though, I rate this book a 5 out of 5. It's an excellent book. It was done very well, and it is a very good combination of romance and smut and thriller and like psychological kind of mind fucks are books that is like one of my other favorite genres. So overall, loved this book. Um, I have virtually zero complaints about it. And if you've read it, I am curious to know what you thought about it.